I put my videos on NotebookLM, and this is what they came up with. You gotta listen.
Okay, so let's start today with a feeling that I think you have probably had at least once. Maybe you were at a job interview, or maybe just reading the news. It's that sneaking suspicion that the game you were playing isn't just difficult, but that it's actually fundamentally rigged against you.
You mean like that whole the house always wins kind of vibe?
Yeah, a little bit more specific than that, actually. It's the feeling that you were given a rule book and you followed literally every single rule and you worked way harder than the person next to you.
But the second you start winning, they change the rules.
Exactly. The referee just blows the whistle and pivots.
Right, which is a very specific type of frustration. And it's usually just dismissed as paranoia, right? Like, oh, you're just sore because you're losing.
Right, right. But what if it's not paranoia? What if that intuitive feeling you have is actually detecting a real structural mechanism? That is the central tension of the deep dive we are doing today. We are looking at a stack of transcripts from a YouTube creator who goes by the name The Slurpee Maker.
And we should probably just address the elephant in the room right away. This is not your standard economic theorist.
No, definitely not.
If you are tuning in expecting a highly polished TED Talk or some formal Harvard Business Review breakdown, you're going to be very surprised.
To say the least. I mean, just going through these transcripts, his vocabulary is so unique. He's got these terms like the acquisition rebuttal or the human being complex, and this geopolitical concept he calls scrotum balls out positioning.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have to unpack that last one later. It's quite a vivid image.
It really is. But here's the thing, and this is exactly why we're covering it. If you look past the chaotic and sometimes shocking language, there is a really consistent, almost rigorous worldview underneath it all.
Totally.
He's blending this high-level economic strategy with a very raw cultural analysis of what it means to be from the Indian subcontinent navigating a Western-dominated world.
Right. It's essentially a survival guide for the marginalized. He is arguing that what we call competition, the American dream, the free market, the meritocracy, is actually a system of containment. He calls it anti-competitive competition.
That phrase really stuck with me, anti-competitive competition. It sounds like an oxymoron.
It does, but it describes a really specific trap. The idea that you are invited to compete, but the entire competition is designed to ensure you never actually take the lead.
So our mission today is to decode this worldview for you. We're going to look at how he thinks the global economy is rigged and how he believes language is actually weaponized to keep specific groups down. And finally, and this is the part I found most fascinating, his very specific and somewhat radical strategies for winning anyway.
Because he doesn't say give up. That's the important part here. He doesn't say just flip the board and walk away. He says get excellent.
Let's start at the top level then, the view from 30,000 feet. He paints this picture of a world that is defined entirely by what he calls America's interest.
Yes. And he's not using that as some vague patriotic slogan the way a politician might. He views America's interest as the operating system of the entire planet, and he argues it's backed up by a trinity of very tangible forces, which are military nukes, sanctions, and tariffs.
So it's just a brute force system in his eyes.
Completely brute force. And this is where that concept of anti-competitive competition starts to make a lot of sense. The standard narrative we always hear is that the West wants everyone to be free, democratic, and capitalistic. Build a better mousetrap. Join the global market.
Right. Compete and may the best man win. That's the pitch they give you.
But the source argues that is a complete lie. He says the West promotes freedom only up to a point. The exact moment an emerging power or even an individual from an emerging demographic actually starts winning, the rules pivot. He uses China as the primary case study for this.
Right, because he argues that China basically did exactly what they were told to do right. Like they integrated, they manufactured, they built wealth.
Exactly. They followed the capitalist playbook to the letter. But because they succeeded, they were suddenly relabeled. They went from being a valuable trading partner to a terroristic threat.
So the success itself is the trigger for the hostility.
Precisely. He basically says you're allowed to play, but you're just not allowed to win. And now he sees this exact same containment strategy pivoting toward India.
Because India is rising economically so fast right now, I think he mentioned they're the fourth largest GDP now.
Rising incredibly rapidly. And his argument is that because of this massive economic success, the Indian subcontinent is now being viewed through that exact same lens of threat. He believes the system is actively trying to suppress Indian mobility to prevent them from becoming the next superpower. It's not about fairness, it's just about maintaining the hierarchy.
It's so interesting because he takes this massive geopolitical dynamic of countries fighting countries, and he shrinks it all the way down to the individual level. He has this term, the human being complex. When I first read that, I honestly thought it sounded like a psychological disorder.
It's a bit of a misnomer.
Yeah.
But the concept is fascinating, and frankly, it's pretty cynical. The human being complex is his term for the way the dominant power structure completely devalues any innovation from outsiders.
How does that actually work in practice? Give me a concrete example of that.
So imagine you are an outsider,
Yeah.
specifically in his context, an Indian entrepreneur or creator. You study hard, you innovate, you come up with a brilliant new idea or a product, you present it to the world. The human being complex is the phenomenon where a person from the dominant group like white America or the West looks at your work and just says, oh, I can do the same thing.
I can do the same thing. I mean, that sounds harmless enough on the surface, right? Like it's just simple confidence.
But it's not harmless. It's a complete dismissal. It's a way of saying you are not special. Your innovation isn't unique to you. It's just something humans do. And since I'm a human and a more powerful one, I can just do it too, and I can probably do it better.
So they basically strip all the credit away from the originator.
Worse than that, they treat the rest of the world as what he literally calls an intellectual property farm. They harvest the ideas, they claim they can replicate them, and because they have the sanctions and nukes backing them up, they don't have to pay for them. They don't have to offer any returns to the person who actually did the groundwork.
It's like the colonization of ideas. Your idea is great, so now it's ours.
Exactly. And here is where I assume you normally ask, well, why don't they just use the legal system? Why don't they use democracy to protect their rights?
That would definitely be the logical next step, yes. If someone steals your stuff, you sue them. Or you vote for better protections.
Well, that brings us to one of his most provocative takes in the whole transcript.
Yeah.
And one that really challenges the Western worldview. He explicitly says voting is harassment.
Yeah, I circled this in the transcript like 3 times with a massive question mark. Voting is harassment. That is a wild take to hear. Most people view voting as the ultimate expression of freedom and personal agency.
He flips that completely upside down. In his worldview, if you are a minority or an outsider trying to succeed, voting is just a mechanism for the majority to gang up on you.
So it's the tyranny of the majority, basically.
It's weaponized democracy. If a group decides they don't like your success, they don't need a valid logical reason to stop you, they just vote on it. They vote for policies that restrict you, or they vote for cultural norms that exclude you. He views it as a tool of collective suppression disguised as fairness. It's just a way for the mob to harass the individual who's rising above them.
And we should be clear, we are just unpacking his theory here, not endorsing it. But man, that is a bleak view of civic engagement. So the political system is a trap to him. But he doesn't stop there. He spends a ton of time talking about the social system too, specifically language. And this is where we really get into the containment strategy.
This is the part where the analysis gets very raw, and we have to discuss some of the ugly realities of the internet today. He argues that specific words and slurs are not just mean words, they are actual economic weapons. He focuses heavily on the P word.
Right, Pajit. And the variations of it like Paj or Pidgeot, I've seen this all over social media lately. It really seems to be everywhere.
It is everywhere. And he argues that the internet and what he calls voting parties, which are just groups of people acting in unison online, use this label highly strategically. By tagging South Asians with this slur, they are associating an entire demographic with being inferior or unhygienic or misogynistic.
And his point is that the goal isn't just to bully them, right? It's not just casual trolling.
The goal is economic and reproductive isolation. He says the literal point is to ensure they don't, quote-unquote, get some.
Get some meaning.
Meaning money in relationships, sex and commerce. He sees them as totally interconnected markets. If you can successfully label a group as a piece of junk or a dump, which are the terms he references frequently in the text, you create a massive social barrier. People won't buy products from a piece of junk. People won't date a piece of junk.
It just freezes them out of the marketplace entirely.
Completely. And he talks a lot about the psychological toll of this, too. He gives this incredibly vivid example of how the lingo is so pervasive that you might catch yourself calling someone a piece of dump and then realizing in the exact same breath that you're effectively talking about yourself.
Internalized racism. You actually start believing the containment strategy yourself.
It's psychological warfare designed to make you accept your own containment. And he extends this control to gender dynamics, too. He has a very specific and controversial theory about feminism.
Yeah, this part was complex. He argues that feminism is weaponized against Indian men specifically.
He suggests that the West uses feminist ideals as a cudgel to target what they call misogynist Indians. But here's the twist. He argues that the Western corporate world actually demands a gentler, subservient male.
So if you act with traditional masculine aggression, like say you want to conquer a market or totally dominate an industry, you get punished for it.
You get labeled immediately. He says if you display that kind of aggression, you're called problematic. You're accused of not fitting the company culture. He even suggests they use labels like homosexual in a derogatory way to strip men of their traditional aggressive status just to keep them docile in the office.
So it's all about neutralizing competitors. If you
Mm.
make the men docile, they won't fight you for market share. They'll just be good little employees.
Exactly. But then, and this is just classic Slurpee maker logic here, he points out the massive hypocrisy with yoga.
Oh, the yoga example was perfect. It really crystallized the human being complex for me when I read it.
It's his ultimate example of cultural theft. He says the West colonized yoga. They took a practice that is deeply fundamentally Indian. When it wasn't cool to them, it was just weird. But now they use it to make women sexy and fit. They totally commercialized it.
But they don't call it Indian anymore.
No. He says they act like yoga is for us now. They strip the origin away, claim they could do the same thing but better, and then they cut the originators completely out of the prestige and the profit.
So you are navigating a world where the politics are rigged, the language is a trap, and even your culture gets stolen. It sounds incredibly bleak. It sounds like a situation where, honestly, you should just give up.
And that is exactly where the unbiased and ethical trap comes in. This is a tricky philosophical knot he ties, but it completely explains why giving up or just following the rules is the wrong move.
Break this down for me because I got a little bit lost in the transcripts here. The
Okay.
difference between biased and unethical versus unbiased and ethical.
Okay, so he argues that the American system frames itself constantly as unbiased and ethical. We treat everyone the same, we follow the rule of law, we are fair to all, that's their brand.
Sure, equal opportunity for everybody.
But he says if you as an outsider try to be perfectly unbiased and ethical, you are playing a losing game.
Why, though? Being ethical is almost universally considered a good thing.
Because the system itself, America's interest, is inherently biased toward itself. It protects its own interests with nukes and tariffs. So if you come in and play by the ethical rules of being perfectly fair to everyone, you are acting like a wussy, in his words. You aren't fighting for your own side, while the other side is ruthlessly fighting for theirs.
You're unilaterally disarming yourself, basically. You're bringing a handshake to a knife fight.
Exactly. While they have the nukes and the sanctions, which are incredibly biased tools, you're just trying to be polite and ethical. He says you have to understand that the game is unethical and biased by design, so you have to stop being surprised when it treats you unfairly.
Okay, so if the game is rigged and being good doesn't work, how do you actually win? Because he clearly wants his listeners to win. He talks a lot about excellence.
He really does. He is very focused on individual agency. And his strategies are, well, they're pretty unconventional.
Let's talk about the recession stuff. Everyone right now is freaking out about the economy. The headlines are constantly screaming doom, but he seems to be saying, bring it on.
He is a total contrarian here. He uses this forest fire analogy. He says a recession or a tech winter is not a disaster at all. It's a necessary cleansing
A cleansing of what exactly?
of deadwood. Weak companies, bad ideas, people who are just coasting along. He thinks the easy money era just made people lazy. A tech winter forces extreme efficiency. It forces automation.
So his advice isn't save your money and hide under a rock.
No, his advice is to build. He tells his listeners, do not hunker down. This is the time to focus on tangible results. Stop chasing unicorns and hype. Solve fundamental problems. While everyone else is scared and freezing, you should be out there building real value.
And one of the ways you find that value, and I still cannot believe this is his actual advice, is doom scrolling.
This is probably my favorite insight in the whole stack of transcripts, honestly. Usually we are told doom scrolling is the absolute enemy. It rots your brain.
Right. Put the phone away, go touch grass. That is the standard advice everyone gives you.
He says, no, keep scrolling. He completely reframes doom scrolling. Lying on your bed at 2 a.m., looking at random videos. He calls that discovering information at high capacities.
Discovering information at high capacities. That is a very, very generous way to describe watching cat videos and TikTok dances.
It is, but he has a massive caveat to it. You can't just consume. He says the goal is to trigger synapses. You are actively looking for a spark. And the exact moment you get that spark, you have to get up and create content immediately.
So it's input and output. You can't just be a sponge.
Yes. He believes that by reacting to the algorithm, you create microeconomies. You spot a trend, you add to it, and you create value. He has this surprisingly communal view, actually, that future generations, he calls them the kids, are depending on us to create these digital pathways for them.
So you're not wasting time, you're doing rapid market research.
As long as you execute. If you just scroll and go to sleep, you lose. You scroll and create something, you win.
Okay, so we are building in a recession. We are doom scrolling for inspiration. But how do we deal with the people actively trying to stop us? The voting parties we talked about earlier. This brings us to his book, The Acquisition Rebuttal.
This is really his magnum opus of strategy. And the core idea of it is dissociation.
Which goes against literally every piece of networking advice I have ever heard. Usually it's not what you know, it's who you know. You need to network.
He rejects that completely. He says you do not need to be acquainted with anyone. The internet and the cloud have connected everything globally. You can access the entire global market right from your bedroom. You don't need to be convinced by people in your local circle or navigated by these social gatekeepers.
He has that great line in there. I don't have time for situations for low-income things.
It's ruthless, but it's really empowering. He's saying if a situation, a social interaction, a family drama, a workplace clique is low income, meaning it doesn't add any real value to your life, you dissociate. You just opt out.
You use the acquisition rebuttal.
Exactly. You say, I am not convinced by your reality. You just block it out. You focus solely on high-income things via the cloud. It's all about cutting the noise so you can strictly focus on the signal.
And he grounds this in physical reality, too, which is interesting. He talks about being a pack rat, which, again, usually people tell you to declutter your life, Marie Kondo, everything.
He says, buy the stuff. Keep the stuff. He views tools and physical products as timestamps of the world economy.
What does that mean, though, timestamps?
It means that when you buy a piece of technology or a tool, you are capturing a piece of innovation from that exact moment in time. He argues that physical ownership creates an environment of innovation around you. If you have the tools physically around you, you have the power to create even if the world tries to cut you off. You become completely self-sufficient.
So you've got your tools, you are dissociated from the haters, you are doom scrolling for ideas. Now, when do you actually strike? This brings us to his whole theory on the holiday season.
The July to December strategy. And this is very specifically targeted at his audience, people who might not celebrate the Christian or Gregorian holidays.
Right, the Indian subcontinent demographic again, or really anyone outside that specific Western tradition.
He says the holiday season, specifically the end of the year, is when the West slows down. They get very leisurely. Cheers, good times, snow presents.
The corporate world definitely goes into full hibernation in December. The out-of-office auto replies just start piling up everywhere.
And he argues this is their vulnerability. This is the exact time to win the economy. While they rest, you work twice as hard.
But you don't make a scene about it, right? He advises being what he calls a social chameleon.
Correct. You don't want to alert them that you're overtaking them. So you blend in, you pretend to celebrate, you go to the office party, you drink the eggnog, but underneath it all, you're using that 6-month period to aggressively grind while they're out gifting.
It's all about finding that edge, finding the quiet moments when the anti-competitive machine is asleep at the wheel.
Exactly. It's essentially guerrilla warfare in the business world.
And speaking of that machine, we have to discuss the metaphor he uses to describe American dominance. I tease it in the intro. Scrotum balls out, positioning.
Oh, it is certainly vivid. I don't think I am ever going to forget that phrase.
It's one of those phrases that you hear and you're just like, did he really just say that?
Yeah.
But beyond the pure shock value of it, he uses it to describe a very specific geopolitical reality.
He does. And if you strip away the crudeness, it's actually a very powerful image. He is describing the sheer, undeniable visibility of American military and electronic dominance.
It's not a subtle power. It's not hiding in the shadows at all.
No. He says it's expensive and it's just out there. It's a massive display of dominance designed purely to intimidate. It's the ultimate anti-competitive posture. It's basically the superpower standing there saying, look at what we have. Look at the size of our arsenal. Don't even try to compete with us.
Because it prevents others from delivering their products. It's an intimidation tactic on a massive global scale.
Exactly. And his whole philosophy is about how to maneuver around that overwhelming, vulgar display of power without getting crushed by it. You do not fight the scrotum balls out positioning head on. You will lose that fight every single time. You use the cloud, you use the holidays, you use dissociation to go completely around it.
So let's try to synthesize this, because we've covered a massive amount of ground today, and some of it is pretty heavy. We've got a world that is, according to the Slurpee maker, totally hostile, rigged, and run by America's interests.
A world defined by racial containment, where even the casual words we use are traps designed to keep us poor.
But the message at the end of the day isn't nihilism, it's actually this really aggressive optimism.
It is. It's a very loud call to excellence. He's saying, use the very tools of the oppressor. Use the internet, the cloud capitalism itself to carve out your own space. You gather information, you create content, you dissociate from the noise, and you build your own reality.
It's a call to self-reliance in the extreme, taking that phrase, I can do the same thing, and using it for yourself.
And if they tell you that you can't, you use the acquisition rebuttal. You look at them and say, I am not convinced by your reality.
That is the big takeaway for me. We spend so much time seeking validation from the system. We want the system to tell us we are good enough. We want the boss to pat us on the head.
And he is saying the system is literally designed to tell you you're not good enough. So stop asking it.
Which leaves you with a really fascinating question to think about after listening to this. Think about your own internal voice. How much of your current reality, what you think you can and cannot achieve, was actually voted into your head by someone else's anti-competitive strategy? Are you convinced by the people around you, or are you ready to build something they literally can't vote down?
Are you living in the human being complex just waiting for someone to steal your ideas? Or are you securing your own high-income situations?
Something to chew on the next time you are doom scrolling at 2 a.m. Maybe that random video isn't actually a waste of time. Maybe it's the exact spark for your next microeconomy.
Just make sure you create something afterwards. Don't just consume.
Exactly. Find that silver lining even in the anti-competitive competition. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
All right, that was it, guys. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.